Now, quick little background in the Thai language. The reason why it seems so hard is because of this concept of having 5 tones. And there are 74 letters, 44 of which are consonants. And depending how you count, there's at least 30 vowels. And then the way it's taught conventionally is that consonants are supposed to have 2 sounds, what they call an initial sound and a final sound. Apparently, this letter, when you start, is a D sound. But if it appears at the end of a word, it's a T sound. And when you read whole sentences, there's no spaces. So how do you separate out the words? This is kind of all wrong. So what I did is I started off by regrouping the letters. First of all, I kicked out all the obsolete ones. So you're not even going to know about the obsolete ones because they're obsolete. You don't need to know them. And then I took the consonant letters that were the most common ones, kind of basically what you'd find in Mani, the children's stories, will probably only have these letters involved. There are other letters that have got the same sounds, and they probably came from the Pali language as kind of extra add-ons. We kind of had this in English also. We brought in words that have a GH spelling in it, or an OU spelling in it, or an EA spelling in it, or AE for encyclopedia, probably because it came from German or Dutch or Greek or whatever it is. So we learn these most important letters first. This will basically give you enough letters to basically recognize 80% of the words in Thai. And then as we come across some extra words that are slightly less common, you might come across a few other letters over here. So we'll learn them as we get to them. And then these at the bottom, you can more or less not bother with because they don't really appear in basic words. They might appear in kind of complicated words like names of places, names of people, concepts, political concepts, religious concepts, and so on and so forth. Now, for the vowels, what I've done is I've grouped them more or less by shape and sound. So instead of having to learn these as 4 separate vowels, I just call them igloo vowels. So once you know the one igloo vowel, the others are kind of variations of the same vowel. You just learn the one vowel and the rest are kind of little extensions. You don't learn it as individual vowels, you learn them as a group. Same thing here. These 2 vowels are kind of very similar. These are very similar. And these are what I call the dirty vowels, which are combinations of these vowels. And I've also eliminated some vowels that you don't need anymore. Another thing about the Thai language is that they have 2 ways of writing the same sound, except one sound is shorter than the other. And I realized that actually they're exactly the same vowel, except there's a little character at the end that just says, this vowel that you just see is now shorter. So by eliminating all those extra vowels and just learning that little rule that this character makes this vowel shorter, all those other vowels I'm going to throw away. So we end up with about a dozen groups of vowels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-ish. Not even a dozen, 7. But, once we unpack these groups, it might end up at about a dozen. And then we've got the tone marks, which literally come from the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. That looks like a 1, and that kind of looks like a 2. If it's a 2 with a little loop there, this is a 3 sort of on its face, and that's 4 is like a 4-way intersection. But that was meaningless to me. For me, to say that's tone 1, tone 2, tone 3, tone 4 doesn't mean anything. I had to find some way of connecting the symbol, which I now call a dagger, because it looks like the sword of Damocles or a dagger hanging over your head. The 4 tone marks I treated as, in this case, a dagger. See, there's the dagger, a vertical line, and it does things to people. It kills them, basically. The surf mark, you see, the tone mark looks a little bit like this. You see, it's got some sort of figure on top there, and it's got like a little surfboard over there coming down a wave, and it does things to people. It makes ladyboys jump up into the air in an uncertain manner, and it makes boys and girls get really excited and energetic. And then you've got the bow tie, which looks a little bit like a bow tie. That's not quite finished. And then you've got the plus, which basically looks like is that a Swiss flag? I don't know. So it's a flag that somebody takes up a mountain. By doing that, by having these 4 pictures, that tells me what to do with the word to get the right tone. And it simplifies the process from easily 30 different rules for how to get the tones to about 12, I'd say, 10 to 12 simple rules. We actually use tones in English. And when I'm going to cover the tones in Thai, we're going to use exactly the same tones that we have in English. Now, we have tones in English, right? Right. If I were to say something like, oh, clever you, or clever you, that is a different tone in English. What about if I said to you, if I asked you, do you have a company? You wouldn't really understand what I'm saying, right? But I'm speaking English. Tom, you got a company. You just started a company, haven't you? You've had many companies.
Working on it.
You're working on it, you know. But in English, you don't say company, you say company. Now, that company, that accent, that emphasis in linguistic terms, you call it a stress. That is a tone, but it's not a frequency tone. It's not a musical tone. It's something else. It's an energy, something to do with energy, how you stress or emphasize that syllable, company. I say massage, you say massage, right?
Massage.
Yeah. So when people talk to me, well, a massage, well, what the fuck is a massage? Oh, it's a massage. The same thing with somebody from Singapore came to give a course on finance for companies. And he was talking about the company assets. Tom, how many assets have you got in your company? And then I realized it's not company assets, it's company assets. So yeah, they can be speaking your own language and you can still not understand them correctly if they don't use the right tones, whatever you want to call tones. So even the word tones is not really the right word to use. But for now, we'll continue to use the word tones to describe this phenomenon of changing the way you speak. It's what people are used to hearing. And if they don't hear what they're used to hearing in the way they are used to hearing it, they won't understand you. Here are the tones in Thai. And again, using this new definition of tones, which is not a non-definition, a working definition, it depends on how you count them. There are really, I would say, 2 tones, maybe 3 tones, or 3 groups of tones. There's what I call the question tone. Now, when we ask a question in English, we do something, and this is what we do. I ask you, are you fine? Really? What are you saying? Have you got it? We do that naturally. I call that the question tone. So that the question tone applies to words in Thai that have that tone. So I'm just going to call it a question tone. So if I say to you the word for 2, which is song, or the word for 3, which is sam, is pronounced with our English question tone. So the way I do that is I get myself into the right sound by saying to myself, are you fine? And then switching the word fine with the Thai word, are you song? Are you sam? And that gives me the right tone pronounced in the correct way using the natural English tone. So we know how to do that already. So can we try that? Let's do the words song and sam. Start off by saying, are you fine? And then say, are you song? Are you sam? And let's see if you can get that sound. So start with you, Tony.
Are you fine? Are you song? Are you sam?
Yeah, make the sound of the fine and the song and the sam a little bit longer. Are you fine? Are you song? Are you sam?
Are you fine? Are you song? Are you sam?
And now can you try to say fine, song, sam, just with that tone? Like a question.
Fine, fine, song, sam.
Right. Oh, not sam. No, that was, see, in English, when you say something fine as a finality, we make a different tone. So, and that's very tricky because in English, we use tones to completely change what we're saying or to add other information, like what you just did. You said, I'm now saying the final word, fam. No, you've got to stop yourself from thinking in terms of English tones, which you just do subconsciously, automatically, and be very strict about keeping that question tone. So song, sam.
Song, sam.
Yeah, got it.
Are you fine? Song, sam.
Done. So what happens is that there's some kind of, I don't know what it is, a kind of a muscle memory or a kind of a physical memory of producing the sound in the correct way. And what I'm going to try to do in the rapid method is disengage your thinking mind from the actual act of speaking. Because as soon as you start thinking intellectually, I've got to make a question tone, that doesn't mean anything. You've got to kind of get yourself into the right physical feeling and then just let it come out. Let your mouth do the talking, as it were. You know that advert for Yellow Pages, let your fingers do the walking? When we speak Thai, or in fact, when we speak any other foreign language, you've got to let your mouth do the talking, not your brain. Now, for the emphatic, what I call the emphatic or energetic tone is kind of a, yeah, I'm excited. This is great. This is wonderful. No, don't do it. So it's a lot of energy. So you've got to make that energetic sound. And the way to do that is actually physically make a fist and go, yeah, like, wow. So let's try that with the word for 5 is ha. And I know it sounds a bit silly to say ha when you're just saying 5, but that's how you got to say it in Thai. You got to say ha. I want 5. I want ha. Right, Tony, you start.
Ha.
Got it. That's easy. Tom,
Ha.
more energy. Ha.
Ha.
That's it. Erica.
Ha.
Yeah. Claude.
Ha.
That's it. Anthony.
Ha.
Bit more energy.
Ha.
That's right. I know it feels embarrassing, but Thais know how you're feeling internally. And then the third tone, or the third group of tones, is a monotone. And actually, that is probably the hardest sound for us to make, because in English, we rarely speak in a monotone. You've got to kind of talk like a robot. I am a robot and I do not speak with any emotion in my voice, and I keep my voice very flat, and it's very hard to do. And it's also very hard to understand, right? So let's see if we can try that with a Thai word. Computer is pronounced in a very monotonous way. Computer. So give me that word, but say it in a very flat, monotonous voice. Tony.
Computer.
Lengthen it out a little bit more at the end. Computer.
Computer.
That's it. Tom.
Computer.
That's it. That is going to be the hard tone for us. But what is interesting is that most Thais, when they speak fast, they tend to speak in a monotone most of the time, except for certain words, usually in terms of the rhythm of your speech. In musical terms, it's like a cadence. At the end of a little phrase where you're kind of either pausing for breath or there's a kind of a natural part of the rhythm, that part will be the tone, whatever the tone, if there is a tone, will be pronounced. And then you move on again to like a whole bunch. So for instance, if I said sabai mai, sabai is monotone anyway. Sabai mai is a question tone, mai. But if I said sabai mai krap, now krap is the polite ending for a guy, or for a girl to be ka, which is said also with a kind of a very short questioning tone. The two last words, mai and krap, are kind of question tones. But I don't have time to say sabai mai krap. I'd go sabadi mai krap, sabadi mai krap. If I'm doing it very fast, sabadi mai krap, I don't go sabadi mai krap. Thais don't do that. They say sabadi mai krap. Ao khao pat gai dai mai. I've now pronounced those tones individually. Ao khao pat gai dai mai. Thais don't talk like that. This is actually what I was saying when I was first learning Thai. I was pronouncing every single word very, very accurately. And people said, what the fuck are you saying? Ao kapat gai dai mai krap. Ao kapat gai dai mai krap. So there was a bit of an emphasis on the dai at the end. Kapat gai dai mai krap. Kapat dai mai krap. And then there was a dai, like we have, like if I said company, I wouldn't say company, I'd say company. If there's time to make a bit of a wobble in your voice to give a feeling of the tone, then you say it. But if there's no time, you don't bother. You just keep speaking in monotone. Oh, kapat gai dai mai krap. Oh, kapat gai dai mai krap. Everything else is a monotone, except for those maybe two, the dai and the krap. So that's useful to know, and it's encouraging, because when you actually go out into the wild and speak Thai, you don't really have to worry about the tones all that much. But you do have to be able to pronounce the tones accurately so that you can not pronounce them, if you see what I mean. We're going to go do this so that it becomes so natural, it's not going to be something you really have to think about anymore. Now, this is an interesting little illustration of, first of all, how we speak in English with a huge amount of tones. So listen to how Dory and Nemo talk to each other. There's a lot of intonations in how they speak. When you try to speak Thai and pronounce every single tone in a precise way, you end up sounding like a whale, which nobody can understand.
We going in there?
Monotone.
Yep.
Yep.
P. Sherman, 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney.
Question tone.
Yep.
Question tone.
We're gonna just swim straight.
Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming.
Dory?
Dory, uncertain tone. Dory, question tone.
Boy, this is taking a while.
A while.
Hey,
Kind of
how about we
emphatic
play a
tone.
game?
Okay.
Okay, I'm thinking of something orange. And it's small.
It's me.
Right.
Right.
It's like
Emphatic tone.
orange and small.
It's me.
Alrighty, Mr. Smarty Pants. And so orange and small and white stripes.
Me. And the next one, just a guess. Me.
Okay, that's just scary.
Wait. I have definitely seen this floating speck before. That means we've passed it before, and that means we're going in circles, and that means we're not going straight.
Hey,
We gotta get to
Hey.
the surface. Come on,
Whoa,
we'll figure it
whoa,
out
whoa.
up there. Let's go.
Hey,
Follow me.
hey.
What?
relax. Take a deep breath. Now, let's ask somebody for directions.
Oh, fine. Who do you want to ask? The speck? There's nobody here.
Well, there has to be someone. It's the ocean, silly. We're not the only two in here. Let's see. Okay, no one there. Nope. Nada. There's somebody. Hey! Excuse
Dory! Okay, now it's my turn. I'm thinking of something dark and mysterious. It's a fish we don't know. And if we ask it directions, it could ingest us and spit out our bones.
What is it with men and asking for directions?
I don't want to play the gender card right now. You want to play a card? Let's play the Let's Not Die card.
You want to get out of here, don't you?
Of course I do.
Well, then, how are we going to do that unless we give it a shot and hope for the best?
But Dory,
Huh?
you don't fully understand.
Come on. Trust me on this.
All right.
Excuse me! Woo! Little fella? Hello? Don't be rude. Say hi.
Hello.
His son Bingo,
Nemo.
was taken to, Sydney. Yes, and it's really, really important that we get there as fast as we can. So can you help us out? Come on, little fella. Come on.
Dory, I'm a little fella. I don't think that's a little fella.
Oh, big fella. Whale. Okay. Maybe he only speaks whale. We need
Dory,
to
What are you doing?
find his son.
What are you doing? Are you sure you speak whale?
Can you give
Dory,
us
heaven knows what you're saying. See, he's swimming away.
Come back.
He's not coming back. You offended him.
Maybe a different dialect.
Dory, this is not whale. You're speaking like upset stomach.
Maybe I should try humpback.
No, don't try humpback. All right. You actually sound sick.
Maybe louder, huh?
Don't do that.
Too much orca. Didn't it sound a little orca-ish?
It doesn't sound orca. It sounds like nothing I've ever heard. Oh. It's just as well he might be hungry.
Don't worry. Whales don't eat clownfish. They eat krill. Oh, look, krill.
The philosophy really behind what we're doing with the rapid method. The real aim of the rapid method is learning to speak. That's really what we want to do. The reading is a vehicle through which we speak, because when you read something, you've got time to look at it and you know exactly how things should sound like. But the point is you ultimately want to be able to speak and understand what people are saying. And the most effective and the quickest way, an efficient way of doing that is through reading. The trick, though, is to select reading material that is colloquial. The problem that people have when they learn a language through reading, like the Japanese when they try to learn English, for instance, or I have a friend who can't speak French, but she can read Camus or something like that, you know, all the classics, very, very high level. She's very, very fluent in literary French, but she can hardly speak French. And the same with the Japanese. They can read and write English to a very, very high level, but you try to have a conversation with them. And the problem is they've learned to study literary material. And I don't care about that in Thai. We find material that is spoken. So what I've done is I've looked for the subtitles of a stand-up show where the guy's literally just talking nonstop for a couple of hours. And you read what he's saying. Romance novels are usually quite good because romance novels are usually conversations between people and usually about mundane things like, you know, where can we go to eat? How do you feel? What does she look like? What does he say? So on and so forth. The other thing is we're going to focus on the muscles, the physical aspect of talking. So we tried as much as possible to get rid of the intellectual brain up top here and try to get to the point where our muscles are almost working as a reflex. Now, that's obviously quite difficult to do because we tend to overthink. We'd be conscious of what we're doing. We're going to try to speak in a way that we just let our muscles just run, like letting a trolley just roll down a hill. It just goes where it goes. You can't control it. Once you let go, you have no control over it. And this trick is to kind of let go. Now, in the beginning, it's really difficult because your muscles don't respond the right way. So we've got to train our muscles to be able to make the right sounds. And that's just repetition. There's no shortcut to that. You've got to repeat a sound, repeat a word, repeat a phrase over and over and over again. And for me, it's like learning a tongue twister. She sells seashells on the seashore. In any language, in your own language, to master a tongue twister, you have to repeat it slowly and accurately, and then gradually speed it up, but keep it accurate. And eventually your muscles she sells seashells on the seashore. I've practiced that because I've been telling people about this over and over again, but you give me another tongue twister and I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd have to spend time taking that one little phrase and practicing it until it becomes a muscle memory, and then I can say it. Of course, if I stop practicing, then that dexterity, you don't lose it entirely, but you're not able to do it anymore, and you have to sort of do a little bit of work to get that dexterity back again for that particular phrase. And one of the songs that we're going to do in this course, it's a reggae song. It's a lovely reggae song. Do, 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 ta, tum. It's entirely composed of Thai tongue twisters. So ultimately, if you can master that particular song, which is a really lovely, fun song to learn, it might take you a month of practicing and learning it and singing it over and over again, you will be able to speak Thai fluently, I guarantee it. Anyway, so ear training, that's kind of a little bit hard, but ear training is a loop back, which works through reading. If you're able to see and know what a word is and what it's supposed to sound like, you actually hear what you think the sound sounds like. It's hard to explain. It's like you hear what you expect to hear. And if you have no expectation of what you're listening to, you can't actually hear it clearly. I'm going to illustrate that.
You all know about a karaoke. When you're singing on a karaoke, you haven't got a clue that those were words. I was singing Take That, Back for Good. Wash your back, wash your back, wash your back. Want your back? What's this? Want your back? I've been singing Wash Your Back 15 years. It's only when you go on a karaoke and you see lyrics, that's what they're supposed to be singing. You know that song, We Are Family? For years I thought they were singing, Just Let Me Staple the Vicar. Right? Who's right and who's wrong here? Listen.
All of the people around us, they say, can they be that close? Just let me state for the record.
That's what they sing. Just let me staple the vicar. What's all that about?
Just let me state for the record.
We're giving love in a femidon.
We're giving love family.
Love in a femidom.
You know Duffy, the Welsh songstress. Last 3 years I thought that poor cow were begging me for birdseed. Apparently it's mercy. I thought it were birdseed. I'm not karaoke with it. Birdseed, birdseed.
Now, obviously, if there were subtitles, you would actually be able to hear, even in your own language, in English. And I actually find this sometimes with watching movies, especially in modern movies, people do not speak distinctly. So I could be watching an English movie and I don't really know what they're saying in detail. I can't always hear. But when I put the subtitles on, what they're saying, suddenly I can hear it crystal clear, because somehow the visual taking in of the words helps me to process the sound I'm hearing and recognize it as the sound that it's supposed to be. So that's why we learn to speak Thai through reading. And ear training is part of listening while reading. Audiobooks, for instance, is a good example where you actually listen to the text while reading it, and maybe subtitles, but subtitles are fairly advanced. Less is more. Now, this is interesting. We're not going to learn everything you need to learn about Thai. We're going to focus on what's relevant to us as foreigners in Thailand. When you look at most language courses, the first thing they teach you is how to book a hotel room. That's probably the last thing you're going to do in the foreign language, because you're going to arrive in a hotel that can speak your language, because that's what hotels do. And then you're going to leave the hotel and go and try to get something to eat at the local takeaway or local restaurant. And that's when all the language you've learned up to that point doesn't prepare you for how do you order the different kinds of food that you can get on the menu. Do you want it fried? Do you want it over easy? Do you want it boiled? Do you want it with salt, without salt, with MSG, without MSG, vegetarian? So we're going to focus on what's relevant to us. Now, obviously, that comes a little bit later because we have to learn the mechanics of reading first. Now, very interesting thing about the missionaries. They study for about 6 months 9 hours a day before they actually go to the country that they're assigned to. So they do 3 lots of 3-hour lessons, very, very intensive. And they just are completely immersed in the language, and they learn to read first before anything. And then they arrive in their country and they're assigned to the Church of the Latter-day Saints, whatever it is. And they then start to preach and speak to people in the language itself. And then after about another, say, 6 months to a year, they're relatively fluent in the target language. But the thing is, they can only speak about the Bible and Jesus and about the missionary work. The moment they step outside and go to a restaurant and order something, or the moment they want to have a conversation with a local person about what their family does and what their profession, what their interests are, they can't say anything. So they're fluent in a very, very small aspect of the life that they do, which is missionary work, and they become absolutely experts at that. But outside that, next to nothing. So we're going to do the same in reverse. We're not going to be learning missionary vocabulary and missionary topics, but we're going to be learning things like start with food, basically. Learn the menus, learn what it is you're eating, so you can go out and order stuff, and learn how to order things, and learn how to ask for prices of things and haggle the price and so on and so forth. So that's what the focused vocabulary building is about. And I would say one of the problems that I think most people have, I certainly have it, is that you try to do too much, you try to spend too much time studying. You've got to do the opposite. You've almost got to do too little studying, but at least you've got to do something. So don't do any more than, say, 10 or 20 minutes a day, and preferably do just 5 minutes a day, because you will always do 5 minutes. In fact, even 5 minutes can be sometimes hard. But if you say to yourself, I'm just going to do 5 minutes, I'm just going to do 5 minutes of going through some vocabulary, or I'm just going to do 5 minutes of the song I'm learning, or I'm just going to do 5 minutes, I'm going to take a phrase and I'm going to practice saying it so I can say it fast and accurately like a tongue twister. Then 5 minutes builds up into, 300 times 5 minutes. How much is that in a year? It's many, many hours. And the other thing is, by doing it in this kind of little but often fashion, it's how our brains work anyway, and how our brains and muscles work. And it's like how trees grow, how vines grow. You can't accelerate that process. You can't make a tree grow any faster than it normally grows, but you've got to keep watering it. And eventually it'll grow to being huge. The same thing with our brains. It applies to your muscles. You can't spend a whole day doing a workout and then suddenly the next day being strong and fit and skilled at what you're doing, because it takes time for your muscles to grow, to strengthen. Same thing with your brain. It takes time for those neurons to actually grow and make connections. And physically, that's what happens in your brain. When you're learning something new, there are a bunch of neurons which elongate, they connect to another neuron, click, and then they hold for a little while. And if you don't use that neuron regularly, it eventually decides to disconnect and grow back again and go somewhere else. That's how we learn. It's a very interesting process. Now, one way of learning is by doing the same thing over and over again. So you have a whole bunch of neurons, like a giant cable with lots and lots of wires inside. So it's a very strong connection. But even that, if you don't use any of those neurons for a long while, all those neurons then disconnect. If you do it the way we're going to do it, which is from all different angles, visually, muscularly, using stories, using repetition, then it's almost like an internet. You've got neurons coming from this side connecting there. You've got more neurons connecting there. You've got more neurons connecting there. They don't have to be as strong as that one single connection, but together they are very strong and almost permanent, because if some of those neurons manage to disconnect, don't worry, there's still thousands of others that are still connected. And that means that you're still able to speak and remember. So bearing that in mind, the strategy is to try to keep a variation and an elaboration of what you're doing. You don't want to just try to remember something in a brutal fashion and say, okay, Psalm means 3. That works fine if they've only got 10 words you have to remember. But if you've got 3,000 words, does Psalm mean 3 or does Samat mean 3? Because they sound very similar. So how do you tell the difference between Psalm and Samat? You need something more, like a location, or you put it into a story, or you embed it into a big tapestry. And then once you know the tapestry, your mind is then able to say, oh, okay, I know that's kind of related to that, and I already know this. It's a little bit like, when you make an international phone call, it actually is quite complicated. You're making a call to the local exchange with a cell phone. You're making a call to your local router. The router then makes it to a central location. The central location goes to an undersea internet connection, VoIP, and then maybe it goes up to a satellite and then goes to the other side. And then the same thing happens in reverse. Once you've made the connection, it's usually very clear and secure. So you've got to make the connection first. It doesn't sound like a complicated, convoluted approach. Unlike, for instance, if you take the same analogy, if you take a telephone, the old string-style telephones, there's only one connection. And that one connection has to be absolutely accurate. You've got to keep the string taut. It can't be too far away. If you break the string, you've lost the connection. If you don't have the tautness absolutely quite correct, the signal is not that strong. But this very complicated infrastructure we have for telephone connections, if during your call you drop the connection from here to your router, especially when you're mobile, no problem. The system automatically connects you to another router. Internally, you don't even realize the connection's been broken and remade again. It's still very strong. That's basically 0.5. The more mnemonics and pictures and stories and elaboration that we can pile onto a particular thing that we want to memorize, the easier and more long-lasting it is to remember that.